everyone, it's Rabea, hope you're all well. It's the same greeting I use for everything in life. However, this is the Riff Workshop. So loosely labelled Riff Workshop. I mean, obviously I like to rant, but there's a few riffs I have in mind to show people. Generally quite simple riffs, but really nice sounding riffs, because that's the main thing. It's not about how hard it is, it's about how good it sounds. Remember that, because that's a useful bit of advice I learned one day a long time ago from my dad. But yeah, basically there was a question which was, what's my favourite guitar of all time? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Ooh. It's hard to say, because obviously now I have some really nice guitars made by Chapman that I use, and they're lovely. But I don't know, every time I pick up my N4, it's probably because I played it for so many years, but it's the one, you know what I mean? It just plays really well. However, I have to say my favourite guitar that I play most of the time now that just feels immense is my relict ML-Bea. That one, just for some reason, it has the soul. Although I'm using this one, this is a great guitar, really, really nice guitar, it sounds great. I just love that. So yeah, I would say my ML-Bea is my favourite guitar of all time. I like that, it was a good first question. But can you tell how many people we have online at any one point, Daniel?
I can.
Wicked. Well,
59 right now.
59, that's a great number. Yeah, basically, I reckon when we hit 100, if we hit 100, that's when I'll start breaking down some riffage. So there's enough people online to benefit from such wondrous riff tuition. In the spirit of Mr. Chapman, I have a caffeinated beverage with me, accompanying me on this journey. It's really, really nice coffee. It's a little bit intense, but it's good. I recommend getting a coffee if you're going to be in this one for the long haul.
Yours is packed.
Yeah, packed I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, because we've become coffee snobs, and now we subscribe to a £6 a week coffee delivery from this really cool place called Pact, P-A-C-T. Check them out, it's well good. Anyway, riffs, for all those who are already watching, riffs are probably my favourite thing about guitar playing. I think they've overtaken lead playing for me of riffs, because there's something really satisfying about writing a riff. Particularly when you're on stage with your band playing it, it just feels awesome to do. So I think for me, over solos, because there's an added pressure with a guitar solo to not make any mistakes. But for some reason there isn't that pressure when you're playing a riff. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. I think because it's more aggressive, and well, it depends on the kind of music you play, but because it's on the lower strings, it just feels nice and chunky. But I spend most of my time, when it comes to riff writing, I spend most of my time improvising, just messing around with rhythms. I play a lot in open tuning, so I can mess around with different rhythms and just power chords in different chord shapes. So yeah, I'll do a bit of that for the next couple of minutes, maybe a minute, I don't know. So I guess when it comes to, that's that kind of process that I was doing there is how I go about writing riffs. I think that's how a lot of the riffs in Dorje definitely came out. I think with Tosca it's a little bit more thorough thought process, whereas with Dorje it comes from that riffage. So like, for instance, I can guarantee you that 2 Week came out of something like it would have been something along those lines that I then liked the sound of and then went back to it to turn it into a riff. So yeah, my approach to riff writing, particularly in Dorje and those chunkier, rocky, bluesy riffs, definitely comes out of improvisation. But yeah, let me show you a cool riff that you can all learn. So, can anyone see my amp, by the way?
Yes.
You can. So many of you have already noticed the beautiful Victory Kraken that's sat to my right, the VX Kraken. There hasn't been any videos of this online yet, so this will be technically the first one. So that's great. But yeah, it's great. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not allowed yet. Anyway, no, it's all right. Yeah. So how many have we got online now?
90.
Yes, that's enough for me. So I don't know what I have no idea the ability level of the people watching. So I decided to pick out a couple of simple riffs to show you how you'd go about playing them. And it's not all about technique to be able to play a great riff. Case in point, this riff is one of my favorite riffs and it's well simple. So I'm going to play it right now. So that is a riff, I think it's called Run to You, and it's by Bryan Adams. It's a beast of a tune, it's classic. If anyone likes Bryan Adams. If you haven't heard of Bryan Adams, if you're too young, I suggest you check him out because he's got a great voice and writes some wicked tunes. But that is a really easy riff, so I'm going to show you how to play it if you've never learnt it before, all you beginners out there. Really, really easy. So only on the first 3 strings, so your E, A and D string, and you start by fretting the 2nd fret of with the A string on the 2nd fret with your index finger, so you get this sound. So you play E, A, D, so you're like that. And then what you do is you do that again and then come back down, so. And that's the rhythm. And then we do the exact same rhythm, but we have to change the chord. So what we do then is we don't move our index finger away from that fret. We fret the 3rd fret with our middle finger. So, and then we play the same thing again, like that. So, like that. And then we slide up to the 5th fret, the same shape. So we go. And that's it. If you want to make it sound a little bit cooler, you can slide up to that 5th fret, so. Like that. It's literally all it is. That's the whole riff. And it's the thing I love about it is it sounds really cool and it's really easy. And it's almost a timeless sounding riff. Doesn't sound dated to me, so. Really straightforward, really easy. And the coolest thing, the way you can tell a good riff, I think, is if you can start hearing drums underneath it and like maybe melodies over the top and all that kind of stuff. If it starts to paint a picture, then it's probably a good riff and I'd stick with it. So yeah, hopefully you've got guitars and you've given that a go. We'll do it one more time after 4. So hopefully you've got, that was 4 by the way. So let me play it after 4 and you can jam along. So 1, 2, 3, 4. you go. It's Bryan Adams' Run to You riff. It's a great riff. So, as I was saying before, the point of it being simple means that it's not necessarily... What you want to remember is when you're writing riffs as well, it's not all about technique, because there's a couple of things to worry about. Firstly, when you play live, you've got to make sure whatever you play, it's right under your fingers. You've not got anything to worry about. So, not being funny, but a riff like that... I mean, even if you were playing at Wembley in front of 100,000 people, it'd be pretty hard to mess that riff up. Do you know what I mean? Because there's only 3 strings, and it's a pretty straightforward rhythm where you're constantly playing eighth notes, which is quite cool. So there's that to bear in mind. And I think when you get into the realms of guys like Periphery, who I love Periphery, but that's a serious level of intense technique and ability to pull that off live. But not only have you got 3 guitarists that have to play similar riffs really tight, so there's all that to bear in mind as well. It's quite important to make sure whatever you write is within your ability. But also it's good to push it a little bit depending on, like how lucky you're feeling. No, seriously, it's good to be able to push yourself the right points, so it's good to keep a good head on when it comes to stuff like that. Anyway, that would be one riff. So I'm going to show you another riff now.
Got a few questions coming in.
Oh, we got a couple of questions. Okay.
The first one was, do you prefer like fast mental riffs or slow and sludgy? Don't know why I said it like that.
Do I prefer fast mental riffs or slow and sludgy? Ooh, well, I guess let me give you a demonstration of. There's 2 riffs that I've written. One is, I would say, faster mental, one is slow and sludgy, and I'll play them and then see which one I prefer. So this would be number 1, slow and sludgy. Oh, no. So that's a great riff. It's just so powerful. And then I wrote another riff not so long ago that goes something like this. This is more of the fast and the mental one. I think the faster one is harder to play, purely because there's more going on. There's one riff that I wrote that if I don't play it, if I don't practice it, I can never do it quite as cleanly as it's supposed to be played. And I think that's probably what happens when you write riffs that are fast. There's a lot of information in them. And that's my argument when it comes to bands like Periphery, who I love. I think there's a lot of their riffs that I just don't remember, and I think that's not because they're bad, it's just because they're so technical that you forget the details, and I like to memorize, strong riffs. So I think with that in mind, something like it gets people's heads bopping, and that's really important. So to be honest, it's a bit of a sitting on the fence answer, but somewhere in the middle, where they are nice and punchy riffs, but there's the odd bit of technicality in there. Like, I think that helps a lot. Like a riff that we do in Tosca, which is called Chalk Teeth, and it's a really cool riff because there's the odd little fiddly bit in there that makes it. It's not necessarily technically hard, but the way you have to play it is quite difficult. So it'd be like a. So that, I really like that riff as well because it's a bit disjointed, and as I say, there are bits in it that are quite difficult, like that, because you got to ring out but also pulling off the. So stuff like that is nice because it can catch you out if you're not really concentrating. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Do we have more questions?
We do.
Wicked.
So if you can repeat this so that people can hear it.
Yes.
When practicing, how do you recommend getting out of sort of ruts with riffs? Do you recommend changing tuning?
When practicing, how do I get out of a rut with writing riffs? So when it starts to feel stale, I assume you mean. Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's really difficult to kind of pinpoint those moments in time where it does get tough. But one of the things that I think is really beneficial is a lot of people and a lot of riff writing, you think it falls on singular notes, you know. Being a good example, because it's all single string stuff. But I've really started to delve into the world of chords. So if you're playing a riff, that's the other riff I played a minute ago is a great example. So so that would be the riff without the extra chords on top. So what I would suggest is, in that situation there, I'm playing. So let's add chords to it, like. So my approach to that would be, rather than looking through a chord book and going, oh, it's B flat major 7 or that's major 13, I'll put that's the note that I'm playing in the beginning of the riff, and then I want to find notes around it that sound cool in the area that I'm fretting. So that's a nice chord shape. Another really nice chord shape. So it's things like that, and then you start messing around with different ones. So for that, it was. So that was a really weird noise. The way I'd get out of a rut, to answer the question directly, is explore different melodic options, i.e., you've got your root note of your riff, think about the chords you can add around it. Another good way is using octave chords. So you know, that's where you fret 2 frets apart from each other between, most commonly, your E and your D string, or your A and your G string. Like that. So you could write a really cool riff like that straight away. You know, that kind of thing. And that's, again, it's just, I think, I do this a lot when I'm writing riffs, and I'll start just going like this. And it's cool if you're just messing around trying to make something sound good. But equally, it's as equally important to branch out a bit. And I would say, look at chords. So start working out, and I don't mean looking in a book. I mean stuff like, you know, start making up chord shapes for yourself. You know, like, I know that's a minor 9, but the point is that find different shapes that work. You know, my point is that I'm just messing around, just putting my fingers in different places and seeing if I can come up with anything cool. Do the same approach where you keep everything on the low string. So if you think about that one being open with my open D, and I can play. Then you do. So a very small example again of the ways you can open up notes for riffs, because all those could have been turned into a riff, right? You know, like I'm just messing around with smaller intervals, like 2 to 3 note chord shapes that are really gonna. So there you go. Another really quick one before we move on to another question would be things like, particularly in open tuning, you've got the little finger can move around, play different extensions. So you can start. Is a really good example of how you can mess around with different voicings and get more out of the stuff that you're playing. Also, think about scales and chords and scales. So if I go to standard tuning and I want to play like a pentatonic, sort of a classic rock kind of riff. You know, like I'm messing around with the stuff that I know, as in I'm up here to pentatonic, and at the same time I'm playing other positions of the minor pentatonic. But all of them with rhythm and groove, with space, can be turned into a cool riff. Now imagine with drums underneath that playing along with you, it would sound nice and powerful. That's how I wrote the White Dove riff. Very much the same things, you know. I was thinking about it in the realms of sort of Dorian, so. So, yeah, what I'm saying is less about, oh, I'm stuck in a creative rut, and more about how can I utilize my scale knowledge, my chord knowledge, and turn it into, and rhythm actually is probably the most important thing about a good riff. Next question.
How do you go about writing progressive music?
How do I go about writing progressive music? That's actually almost a tiny bit easier, because I guess with progressive music, there's that thing where it's like, oh, it has to be on time signatures. So like you instantly start looking into how you can turn a riff into a different time signature. Let me give you an example. So if I play, I was messing around with this earlier, and it is actually a progressive style thing. So I'm playing A dominant 7. So if anyone wants to play that chord, you're literally fretting on the 2nd fret. With your swearing finger, you're on the D string, 2nd fret, and your ring finger's on the B string, 2nd fret. So that you get this chord. And then I was changing to this chord, which is a power chord with a top note with your little finger. So you're playing B flat. So 1st fret with your index finger on the A string, and then play a power chord. So you go. If anyone wants to know what it's the same fret, the 3rd fret, as your power chord, but on the B string. So, and I was literally playing it in a rhythm of 7/8, so it would sound like this. as a really simple example, but instantly, I mean, first things first, I'm in 7/8. So when you approach progressive stuff, there are certain, like, how do I describe it? There are certain, like, trigger things in your mind rhythmically that you know 7/8 or 5/8 and stuff like that. You get used to them over time. The most natural ones, I suppose, for me and Ben and Dave and stuff is probably 7/8 and 5/8, because you think of it in groups of 3 and groups of 2. It's just the way that you remember the rhythm. So you do, like, for 7/8, the rhythm would be like, so da 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 da. And what's actually happening there is I'm accenting 3 of the beats out of 7 in total. So I'm accessing 1, 3, and 5 if you count to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I'm actually doing is forgetting to count, and I'm just remembering that rhythm. So. And that would be a rhythm in 7. And you can do the same with 5, and you count 1 and 3 out of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you've got. And those 2 rhythms that I just said there, so 7 and then 5. Now if I put the distortion on, down tune, and then I start messing around with that rhythm with different notes in the same, so like the same notes I'd use to play riff, like. Now if I think about that and then I go, right, let's throw in those rhythms, so kind of thing, I could do like. So yeah, that would be, what I was doing there was I was actually throwing in bars of 7, bars of 5, like dun 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 dun, stuff like that. Literally just jumping between the 2 rhythms, and sort of not. I'm concentrating less on what I'm doing on this hand and thinking about the rhythm more. And then that would be a good way to introduce yourself into thinking about those rhythms. So you got 7. Also really helps if you can think of a drum beat underneath it, just playing straight across it. It's like dumt, gat, dumt, gat. It just feels nice to be able to groove it. It's the same with 5 as well, so. So I'd practice those to a metronome, get that just going in the background and practice those rhythms. That would be a good way to start into the world of progressive rock. You know, you can even come up with little lines where on the guitar, for instance, I'm going something like kind of thing, and I could just repeat that over and over again. Whilst the drummer and the bass player start playing something across it, and then suddenly you've got prog rock. So it's that kind of thing. Yeah, next question.
How do you, when writing riff, how do you find a good verse that goes well with the chorus without it being too much of the same thing?
When I'm writing a riff, say that again?
When you're writing a song,
Yeah.
how do you find, or how do you write a good verse that goes well with the chorus without being too much of the same thing?
When you're writing a song, how do you write a riff and a chorus that don't sound the same, essentially? There are a couple of good ways to do that, and my go-to ways of doing it are things like, if I'm playing around in a, say my verse is something like a. it's all chordy and stuff like that. I might want to change it up and go to maybe something more riffy. So if I'm playing because the chorus has got to be nice and punchy and catchy and stuff, whilst the verses can be more melodic. So that's my verse. Chorus could be something like this. Well, pre-chorus, chorus. Do you know what I mean? It's all within the same vibe, but I'm just deciding to go from something that's really chordy to something that might be a little bit more riffy. So like that. Do you know what I mean? It's in the same vein, but it's not the same thing. So yeah, the other thing is that verses and choruses, they have to sound sort of familiar to each other, otherwise it's like sticking two bits of a song together and it might not work. So stay in the same vein, but yeah, if you've gone, this verse is pretty chordy, I'm going to riff it up in the chorus, and vice versa. This verse is pretty riffy, I'm going to chord it up. It depends on the song, but you want to do that. There needs to be some sort of balance between the two styles. Same with time signatures, like if you've got a verse in 7/8, you might want it to be less disjointed in the chorus, so you might go straight, all that kind of stuff. There's loads to think about, but hopefully that helped, might give you a different perspective on when you come to songwriting. So that rule, yeah, if I've got a riffy verse, I want a chordy chorus, and vice versa. Next question. How many people we got online now? 128. Hi, 128 people.
Hi.
Thank you for tuning in, by the way, guys. It's really cool that you all want to come and check out the live stream and ask me questions and learn maybe some stuff. That's awesome.
How would a beginner start using more chord-based melodies and making them sound different?
Can you say that again?
How would a beginner start writing more chord-based melodies and make them sound different?
Chord-based melodies vocally, or?
On the guitar. I guess instead of just writing a very simple strumming pattern around E, A, G, and D.
Yeah.
How would you take that one step further?
Chord-based melodies. I guess, to be honest, the simple answer is start expanding your chord knowledge. So the easiest and quickest way to do that is to start looking at altered chords. So if you're playing things like E, A, D, G, so A, D, G. That's a really weird chord. Kind of weird. Let's do E, G, D, A. So I might play all those as open chords. But I might decide that I want something a little bit more, I don't know, not jazzy, but a bit more loungy. So I could take that first E minor chord and I might play an E minor 7. So I've got, my second chord is G. So I might play like a G major 7. So, and then I've got D. So might play a dominant 7 or just a straight up major. And then I might decide that last A chord could be like a minor 11. Or I might do like a dominant. So minor 7. Sorry, it would be dominant. Yes, sir. Sorry. No, sorry, dominant. There you go. For instance, that might be how I'd go about it. Or I might play that first chord. Instead of a minor 7, I might play a minor 11. So. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of different ways to take the same chords and then with chord knowledge, start throwing around it. What it'll do, that same 4-chord progression there, by changing the extension, by changing the type of chord it is, it opens you up to a whole new area of melodic opportunity. No, it opens, it basically allows you to change the vibe, you know? So if you're working with a singer, songwriter, someone, they might really appreciate going from something that may be perceived as a bit folky, so to something a little bit more soul-y, a little bit more R&B. Or you can play an open. That's also a really nice chord. So you know, and that suddenly sounds like a different tune, even though it's the same 4 chords.
It's kind of around expanding your chord vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Picking strings differently.
Yeah.
Just strumming outright.
Yeah, so visit different picking technique as well, whether you play it with your hands, you strum it, you know, you pluck it, and then you're just changing your chord extensions, you're changing them. So that would be how I'd start messing around with different melodic, you know, approaches, I guess. Hopefully that was helpful. Next question.
If you have a good riff, but you feel that it's missing something, would you make it more complicated or try to add layers on top of it?
I would definitely go with add layers on top of it. If there's a riff that's missing something, it could be something as simple as it's missing that harmonic pinch squeal, and then everything's all right. Everything's right with the world again. That's normally what happens to me. Or
Seagull attack.
there's all sorts of seagull stuff happening outside. No, or I don't think I'd make it more complicated. I might change it rhythmically. The two things I'd probably do is add a layer or change the rhythm of it slightly. Or I'd change something. It depends. If you're writing on your own as just a guitar part, I'd probably add a layer, maybe change the rhythm a bit. If I'm working with a band, I would probably, if I didn't know what it was, I'd start looking at the other instruments and going, how about we change the way the drums are played, or how about we leave more space in the bass part, stuff like that. It's about, particularly with riffs, it's about taking a step back and working out, because the more complicated stuff gets, the less memorable it is. That's the kind of formula I like to work to, me personally. You know, it has to have enough space to breathe, it has to groove, and it has to be memorable. So I would say layering, change the rhythm up, or look at the other band members. I probably wouldn't go as far as saying make it more complex. There you go. Any more questions?
Got a bunch more.
We've got a lot of questions. Thank you for all the questions. They're good questions.
At what point did you feel confident to start writing music instead of learning other people's songs?
That's a good question. At what point did I feel confident about writing my own music instead of learning other people's songs? I spent a long time when I was learning guitar playing Extreme, Joe Satriani, learning some Vai and Yngwie and stuff like that. I spent a long time learning other people's stuff. And it was amazing because I used to just get in my room and just be like, wow, this is immense. I'm playing, you know, Pornograffiti, or I'm playing Master of Puppets, and that was great fun. And when I realized that I'd neglected songwriting was when I had to be in a band and I was the guy that was supposed to start writing the songs. And listening to, that's the good thing about being in a band when you get influences from the other band members. Like my old singer, he introduced me to Incubus, and that was when I went from looking at someone like Nuno Bettencourt, who's my idol, going, I want to play like that guy. And then I heard Incubus for the first time and it was like, I want to write like them. You know what I mean? It changed. And you have to work on it. You have to work on writing songs. You got to write a lot, drop a lot, change a lot. And I think I think the longer you spend with a band or the longer you spend writing songs, the more confident you get. I think it got to a point where we'd written some tunes and they were good, but they weren't really they just weren't that good, you know what I mean, when we were comparing to other people. And then we hid ourselves away in practice rooms and just spent a lot of time writing and jamming and finding out what best fit us. And then when we wrote songs, it changed after that. When we went out to gig them, that was when we started looking at things like time signatures, different effects, not just always using guitar amp, you know, different grooves and everything changed. And I think because I knew there was a solid effort from everyone and the way we went about writing, we believed it enough to go, yeah, I'm confident that this stuff is good. And then I think beyond that, it got to a point where when it comes to like, this is random, but what I'm trying to say is when people say, oh, that's really good a lot, like when you've shown them a riff and they say, I really like that riff, I think that's a great riff and stuff like that, you start to be convinced that actually your approach to riff writing, for instance, is one that a lot of people like. So you start to just maybe feel more comfortable about it and start to feel more confident about the way you play music. So my advice there would be spend a lot of time writing songs. Don't be precious about the songs you write. Half of them you'll drop, half of them you'll keep, and half of that half you'll probably change anyway. So just write and write and write and demo and demo and demo, and you'll start seeing that your quality of written material just gets better and better, and then people start to go, that's really cool. And that's when you go, oh, I'm doing it right now, I'm doing it properly. So there. I like that question. It was a good question. What was that bit? That's another thing. Riffs don't always have to be like, you know, like... They don't always have to be single note stuff. You can just use chords to make a cool riff, like that song Panama, you know. It's a great little riff to play, and it's all chords. Here's another one, Steve Vai. I think it's Attitude Song. You know, it's basically A, G, and D with a little bit in the middle. It's great. You know, it's effective. Everyone knows that riff, you know. So it's not always about just single notes, pinch harmonics, and hammer-ons and pull-offs. A lot of time it could be just chordal stuff, you know.
Do you think that the classic sort of pentatonic riff style is less valued these days?
Absolutely not. The question was, do I think that pentatonic riffs are less valued in this day and age? And I say no. The reason is because it's not about at the end of the day, if it's a good riff, it's a good tune, it's great. I mean, look at Cochise by Audio Slave. Straight up pentatonic riff. And the whole band grooving it, and with Chris Cornell wailing over the top. It's a mental tune. It's awesome, and it will always make people bop their heads and go crazy because it's a great riff. Same with... There's a reason why those guys are still the biggest band on the planet, or at least one of the biggest rock bands on the planet, and that's because loads of people like the way it sounds, and they play all pentatonic riff rock and stuff. I mean, like, at the end of the day, one of their latest albums actually... That's the riff, yeah. Something like that. It's a great riff. It's pentatonic. You know, I just think it's about... The thing is, if you stand up on stage and start messing around with pentatonic riffs and you look all like you're staring at your shoes and you look a little bit like timid about it, then people are a lot more likely to criticize the riff because of the way you come across to them. If you're stood there like proper full of belief, you know, rocking out. Like we play White Dove in the Dorje set, and that's the only song out of the whole Dorje set where I'm like, it doesn't really sound anything like the rest of the stuff, and it's a pentatonic riff. However, it's almost like you treat it like tongue-in-cheek. You get up there, you jump around, you mosh out, and you believe it, and people just like, wow, this is awesome. So really, my answer is, it's not less valued. It's just people getting a little bit snobby about, you know, people have this issue with, you know, people just enjoying what they write and just writing whatever they want. And, you know, half of the bands in the world that are super famous are because they don't care what other people think. They just write because they love to. And half the time, those people play pentatonic riffs. So, there you go.
A lot of people try to overcomplicate it, I think.
Yeah. There's a huge, like, people strive to overcomplicate everything. And at the end of the day, and here's another really timeless riff. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a great riff, and it is literally... It's a lick, you know. You know, so there you go. If anyone criticizes, I don't. What's the name of the person that asked the question?
Mr. Choke.
Mr. Choke. If anyone criticizes you for writing pentatonic riffs, tell them to jog on. We got anything else?
Do you have any tips on how to make your riffs sound more metally and heavy sounding?
Yes. Tips on how to make riffs sound heavier and metally sounding. Firstly, down tune your guitar. That was the first bit of advice. See, I always tune to E flat because it's just a little bit meatier. So that's number one. Number two, make sure the amplifier or the tone that you get lends itself to that genre. Now, this might not be a metal guitar whatsoever. In fact, it's not. But it's got a humbucker pickups in it, so it's going to sound thick. And yes, I am playing through the Kraken, which is aimed at guys in hard rock and metal. So, and then it's a case of the style, the way you play. So, like Opeth, one of the biggest, heaviest, like doomy bands ever, death growly bands, they play in standard tuning, and there's a song called The Master's Apprentice, which goes... like that kind of thing. It's just power chords in standard tuning, but it sounds heavy as hell. And that's because the tone they've got going, and it's like how deep it is, you know, like the way you palm mute it and the way you... So it's about the way you approach it. So if you've got any riffs that you want to see, will they translate well into metal? My advice would be crank up your amp, put a bit more gain on it, down tune it a bit. Like take any popular riff that you might have heard and play it on a 7-string or on a baritone where it's down tuned a lot and see if it does the job. That's how I'd suggest that. Next question.
Could you write a basic riff with power chords and then suggest how you could make it more complex?
Yes. A basic riff with power chords and suggest how to make it more complex. Okay. Basic riff with power chords. I'm gonna... Okay, so that's my riff. This is completely made up, by the way, so if I go... So that's my riff. Now, I would say start messing around with... So we're in the key of E. What was it again? So there you go. That was a more complex version of the same riff. So my chords, because I started with power chords, there's your foundation. That's your sort of melodic. That's the melodic foundation of the riff, you know. So I'm keeping the rhythm the same, and I'm keeping the notes from those chords the same, but I'm messing around with. I don't know, like, that was completely made up off the top of my head, but I know that because I'm in E, that's my root note, I've got scales all around that I can use. So, do you see what I'm saying? I can quite easily keep the sound the same and the same vibe, but just making it a little bit more complex by sort of breaking up those chords. So. So I'm just messing around, keeping the rhythm more or less the same, and trying octave chords, trying scale shapes, a few little rhythms thrown in there like that. And it's suddenly this really complicated riff, or at least a little bit more complicated than it was before. And I haven't really had to do much of just taking a different approach. Kind of like going, I'm playing rhythm at this bit, and now I'm playing it as a lead player. You know what I mean? It's the difference in perspective. Hopefully that shed a little light on that, and that was a good demonstration. It's hard to tell when you're all out there in the world, and I have no idea if you thought that was helpful or not, but hopefully it was. It seemed to make sense to me, which is probably a good thing. So, next question.
How do you approach writing for Tosca?
How do I approach writing for Tosca? Okay, so the Tosca deal, basically, we wrote 3 songs in about a month, maybe. And it was a case of me personally hadn't written any heavy progressive music for so long, because my old band Chasing Jade, we split up back in 2012, and even that wasn't super progressive, but it was definitely where I'd grown up writing music with Ben and Dave. We'd all written that style, so we were all very accustomed to it. And then we didn't have Chasing Jade. We did Dorje and Toesland and a few other bits, moved to Brighton, did a degree. So we just didn't have any time to do it for so many years. And then when I just got sick of not doing it. I was like, I have to play in a progressive heavy band. I just have to do it. So the premise when we walked into the rehearsal room was, who knows what will come out? Who cares what comes out as long as we're having fun? So there was no consideration for how easy it was to follow the songs in terms of the time signatures and how complicated it was. There was no consideration for that. There was no consideration for, is it within our collective ability? And the answer was no. At the time, it took us ages to work out this bar from that bar. And it was whatever came into my head. And a lot of the time, like, there were so many random little bits that I think back now, I'm like, I don't remember writing that. So there's a bit in one of the tunes where it goes... And like, I love that bit, but I don't remember how I played it. And it's really difficult. Every time I play it live, I'm like, don't mess it up. And it's this bit, so. And then you have to go. With these two fingers are your weakest fingers when you're playing guitar because they want to move together all the time and you can't convince them to stop moving together. So if you're all sat in front of your computer now, some of you will be able to do it, just so you know, but for those that can't, you try and move them independently. And it's really hard, particularly when you, with your little finger. But anyway, the point is, the reason that's hard is because I'm changing the chord. So, and it's really hard because it's in such a fast, it's so quick to do that you just, it's so easy to mess up. So. So, yeah, my point is that there was no consideration for how hard that would be to play. It just sounded cool. And a lot of pretty much all the Tosca material, it came out, like it just went blah into the room. And it was a case of going, a lot of the time it was Dave going, what did you just play? Because I'd just start playing stuff and it'd just start coming out and Dave would be like, right, I need to keep up. What did you play? And Ben catches on pretty quick, but there was a lot of time where it'd be like, okay, this is the stress because a lot of the time the harder parts of playing together, writing music like that, is always remembering to play the same punch and the same stress and the same choke here and there. And there's one bit in one of the songs where we play like that, and I was like, the drums have to follow that. And so the drums had to play like a Bonham-esque kind of thing. And because it comes out of nowhere, Ben was like, this is just so unnatural to do. And that's what I was saying. My approach with Tosca is whatever comes out, we have to, we just play it, we mess around with it. And the other thing was we keep revisiting the songs to see if we still like every section that we play. So we might write it and then come back a month later and go, I want to change that bit now. It doesn't really feel right. So we just mess around and get more comfortable. But no limitations is the approach with Tosca. We're playing a gig actually on the 31st of July in Guildford. No, in London, Camden Barfly. So if any of you are around, you should come down and say hi. Next question.
Do you know much about stoner style music?
Stoner rock?
Yeah.
I don't know loads about stoner rock, but my interpretation of it might be something along the lines of... I wrote a riff for Dorje that I would consider... Obviously, I'm not playing the right amp. A lot of stoner rock is in the tone as well, don't forget. Like, they'll play these old Sun amps and Selmer amps, these bass treble heads, and they've got a fuzz pedal turned up all the way, and your tone sounds generally really sludgy. So a lot of it is in the tone, but they play a lot of pentatonic style stuff, but it swings and it's, there's really dirty parts and it's awesome. Yeah, so I wrote a riff that went like... And that sounded to me quite sort of sludgy, sort of stoner rock vibe, and there's all that like a... What song is that? That to me sounded quite stoner rock. And that whole idea of like... I don't know. I think, to be honest, you have to listen to a lot of that stuff to have it start venting its way out through your writing. And I do like a little bit here and there. I think it's Karma to Burn are cool, and Clutch are also really awesome, and Red Fang stuff like that. A lot of it is, yeah, down to the tone and generally those kind of weird, swingy, rock, grungy, sludgy riffs. Yes, I do. So I'm going to play a different guitar now, and this is a really cool guitar that you all have the opportunity to win. This is for the guitar that we're actually giving away in the competition, Feeling the Pinch. So let me plug in. I think it's still in tune. It's a great guitar. It plays really well. Yeah, I mean it's nice. It sounds good, and I always find myself just wanting to shred on this guitar. It's a bit of a shredder, but at the same time there's a bit of a nice neck on it to be able to riff and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope some of you entered the competition. We've had quite a lot of entries come in already, and considering what you can win for what you actually what you have to do in the competition, I think is a no-brainer. You should all enter. You should all be entering the competition. It's really easy to do. All you have to do is play along to one of the solos that we wrote on the Musicisum guitar course, make a YouTube video of it and upload it, and also submit it to the link that we've got in the competition video description, and you can win this guitar plus loads of other amazing things. Like there's the Dario hoodie and t-shirts and strings and headstock tuners and all that kind of stuff. The Audiofly in-ears that we use in Dorje, the AF120s, and they're dual driver. They've got a crossover in them and they sound really nice and clear. But also we met a company called Snugs that do basically in-ear monitors that you could go and pay loads of money to get them molded for your ears. Snugs basically do like a sleeve that goes over your headphone that's molded to your ears, so you've got the best of both worlds because you can sort of swap them out and take them on and off, and it's all in-ear mold, so it's great for live playing and all that kind of stuff. And Pedal Deck have submitted us a pedal board to give away for the competition as well. It's a beast, comes with a case, so all your guitar pedals and stuff like that you can put on there. And we've also got the Boss GT001, I believe it's called, and that's like, there's some demos that have just come out actually on YouTube, so you should check them out and see how wicked that pedal is. It's an audio interface as well, so it helps with recording at home. And the Microcube, the GX, is the 20 Microcube 20? Yeah, so everyone knows a Microcube. They're awesome. There's enough reviews of them online, and they're just great little practice amps that you can mess around with at home. But yeah, I just want to say thanks to MITS, which is the Musical Instruments and Technology Show, because they really helped us out with this competition, made it possible. And yeah, basically we're going to be at that show as well, Musicisum. I'm going to be there riffing around, showing you some riffs and guitar techniques and stuff like that. So that's going to be awesome. But yeah, the competition, I really think it's worth doing because there is so much gear that you have the opportunity to win, that essentially what you end up doing is playing along to a solo that I've written. And it's the mid-range difficulty of the solo. It's not the easiest one. It's not the hardest one. It's like slap bang in the middle. So it's achievable. And I really think it's worth trying to do because at the end of the day, you just got to put your own spin on it. I think it's really important to say that you play the solo how it's written, but if you have a certain feel, like the way you play your vibrato or the way you bend stuff or slide stuff, like absolutely do it in your own way, just as long as it's the same solo, so that everyone's on a level playing field. And I think that's the best way to go about it. And I'm judging it, so I'm going to be looking at all the solos and all the entries, and it doesn't matter what level you're at, it's really about how well that solo comes across, and you got to make it your own, because I wrote that for people to learn, whereas I think that if you're going to play it back to me, it should be how you would play it, you know, so be yourself when you come to playing it. And we're going to be doing a live stream just before we announce the winner, so to go over any troubleshooting stuff. Basically, I don't know if it's going to be like a week before or something like that, where anyone that's got any questions or struggling with anything on the competition will be live streaming it, so I can help you with that, any questions you've got. But I say it again, like if I was entering this competition, I'd be like, this is amazing. It's like so possible to win. I think we really wanted to make it so that it doesn't matter what level you're at, whether you're like a sick shredder or someone that's just learning your pentatonic, that you can actually sit down, watch the video lesson and learn the solo, and then have a great chance of winning. As I say, you get this guitar, it's a beast. It's a great guitar, and it looks cool too, nice and matted, and it's got a nice binding on it and stuff like that. So EMG pickups as well, but I don't want to scratch it up by shredding on it too much, so I'm going to swap it back. Any more questions? Definitely enter that competition, guys, honestly, it's worth it. I was about to. That's a great song, although the singer's a bit random, but it's cool.
Yeah, the intro to that song completely like builds you up for something
Yeah.
down afterwards.
Any more questions? Any more for any more? I want to say again, thanks for everyone that's tuned in and actually watched this and checked it out. And if you have any questions on riffing, learning riffs, writing riffs, you know, all that stuff, please ask them, because I'm trying to answer as many as possible. And it's fun.
How would you go about sort of approaching riff writing modally?
How would I go about writing riffs modally? So I've been asked that question quite a few times, and the best example I can give you for something like that is think about the mode first of all. Think about the characteristics of that mode. So if we look at something like Phrygian. So. It's got that flattened second in it, right? So. Got that flattened second in it, so when you're writing a riff you might want to include that flattened second in to make it Phrygian sounding, so when you write a solo, you know in Phrygian you're going to be alright. So like so yeah, that would be how I'd approach it. I would look at the mode, look at the characteristics of it, and then work out how I can adapt that to a riff. Might be that your riff is in a mode, so like that Pantera, it's got that Phrygian dominant sound to it. You know what I mean? That's a really good example of a modal riff. There's been tons. I mean, there's literally been tons. And I think it does help if you know your modes, you know which notes out of the major and minor scale have been changed to create a mode, and then make sure when you're looking at your chord progression that you might add those in. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
What tips do you have for, what riffs would you recommend someone learns as a beginner kind of blues player?
A beginner blues player, what kind of riffs would you go about learning? Well, I think if you've learned the sort of Stevie Ray 12-bar thing that he does. Oh. Yeah, would be a prime example. So, but the idea there is it's a 12-bar blues. It's just the way that it's played. But how would I approach? Was it writing riffs for blues, or was it?
Yeah, sort of writing. What riffs do you recommend they listen to and learn? Influential players. Just where should a beginner blues player look for riff inspiration?
A blues player for riff inspiration, I guess. I don't know, because I mean, like, in terms of, I'm not a massive listener of blues. I love blues, but I don't listen to a lot of it. But the blues players that I listen to are guys like John Mayer, Philip Sayce. To be fair, those are the two main ones that I listen to. And yes, they are incredibly good players, but sometimes their riffs aren't exactly that hard. Like, for instance, Who Do You Think I Was? I mean, it's rhythmical, but in terms of notes, quite simple in A. And you're playing, the first little bit that you play is 4th fret D string with your index finger, and then 5th fret G string with your swearing finger, and you slide it up 1 fret. So, like that, and then, which is 5/7 on the D string, so, and then 3 on the A string, and then you play it over and over again, so. Second time round, you want to hit that 5th fret on the A string, so. It's a nice simple riff, and that's bluesy. You can play all sorts over the top of that. Work out like playing around the open position pentatonic. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, riff around with your pentatonic as well, as I said before. Hendrix is a great example of that, that whole like all that stuff. Pentatonic again. A lot of the stuff that I learn in terms of that bluesy sound, or that is from guys that are demoing gear. Actually, Wildwood, I think it's called, Wildwood Guitars. The guy that demos all their stuff is a fantastic guitar player, and he does that really nice kind of that kind of. That kind of. He's really good at all that stuff. So I tend to surf YouTube, and if I'm looking to learn some bluesy stuff, I'll search around a lot of blues lessons, blues tips, and just search around different players and see what they do from an improvisational standpoint to work out what's good and what's not.
playing some of your favourite riffs.
Why? Are we running out of time?
Last night.
20 past. Oh wow, we've been going along. We've run over. I'm enjoying myself that much. I'll play some of my favourite riffs then. No. Some of my favourite riffs of all time. Oh, that's such a hard question, man. Whoever asked that. Or was that Dan? I think it depends. It's favourite riff to play at this current moment in time. I really love this one that I wrote a few months ago. Yeah, I love that riff. It's that ending there, that... Because you got to play it really fast and fit all the notes in. I like that riff. I like that one a lot. Another riff that I really enjoy playing is one of the riffs off my upcoming, whenever it's going to come out, solo EP, and it's that... Like that kind of thing. Pretty periphery-esque, but I like the rhythm of it, the fact that your hand's always doing this the whole time, but it's changed by what notes you're playing. That bit. Because it alternates between down picking that note and up picking it, so you end up going... And it feels really good to do. That would be another favourite riff.
Okay, one last question and we'll finish up.
Okay, last question.
I'm only doing this because it's introduced so well.
Okay.
Pluto was demoted from planet status because it didn't meet the definition of a planet. What would you define as a riff? And what characteristics do you look for in a good riff?
Okay, can you just read that back?
Basically, what do you think makes a riff a great riff?
What's the name of the guy that asked the question?
Jubel Thomas.
Jubel Thomas?
Jubel.
Jubel. It's a great riff. What makes a great riff is, I guess, it has to have good rhythm. It has to have good rhythm. It has to have good rhythm.
I'm loving that Pluto was demoted from planet.
Yeah, that's the bit I can't stop laughing about. Like, it's how you go from talking about Pluto to riffs. I just think it's great. It's tenuous link or what.
What's your biggest planet-sized riff?
What's my biggest planet-sized riff?
Play one.
My biggest planet-sized riff, Four Lights by Periphery off the new album is great, just because it's really dirty. But in terms of what makes a great riff, as I said before, rhythm, it's got to have a bit of attitude about it, like rhythm, like powerful chords, good groove. Anything like that will make a great riff. So yeah, I guess going forward, when you're writing riffs, make sure that it grooves really well. It's got some nice offbeats and stuff like that. And just make sure that whatever you do end up playing is easy enough that on stage you're not worrying about every second of playing that riff. I guess that would be that's what makes a good riff. Simple yet effective. So yeah, that would be the last question. I hope that was answered okay, but thank you to Jubel for the question.
You play out?
Yes, I can play. I will play for you.